The following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Chit-Chatting with Jocelyn. I'm so glad that you could join us this afternoon. And today we have Karen Testerman, and I know she's my co-host, but today she's not. This is Karen Testerman running for New Hampshire Governor. Yes, you heard it right. I know you've heard it before, but we are going to have a little chit-chat about what is the state of New Hampshire. And I mean that as in, what is going on? What are we looking at? We are looking at corruption at epic lengths, and you can roll your eyeballs all you want because I can't see you, so that's a good thing. However, we have got corruption in this state from top to bottom, from bottom to top, from right to left. Not a conspiracy theory anymore. Proof. Absolute proof. The people, we the people, our voices are not being heard. Our vote is not being counted. Oh yeah, it goes through the machine. But have I got some stories for you? Like, somebody went to vote on Tuesday and they received a ballot that was already filled out for the schools. Not one town, not two towns, not three towns, several towns. Oh, it was a mistake. It was only one. No. It was a whole bunch. How about the town of Bedford for the presidential election? They found 197 ballots that were never counted. Never counted. And when the authorities informed the Secretary of State, should we tell them, should we this, should we that? Well, it's too late now. It doesn't matter. You know, I wouldn't tell anybody. And after that, just before the town election in Bedford, so between the presidential and the town election, they found a drawer full. So when the counting machines, when the Diebold AccuVote Dominion machines kick out of a ballot that it's incapable of reading for whatever reason, it goes into a little drawer on the bottom, the ones it can't read, and then the ones that it does count. They found an entire drawer full of ballots that they forgot. Somebody didn't empty the bin at the end of the night. So that is two batches. One batch is 197, I don't know the number in the second, that were never counted. And they were told, forget about it. So when I say our vote doesn't count, I'm not kidding. And you should be hot under the collar about this. If we miss one vote, it doesn't matter whether you're undeclared, Republican, Democrat, your vote counts. We're going to get into this. Actually, we might get into this half, I think. And the second half, we'll talk about specifics with Karen and what she wants to. So now that I'm all done ranting, chit-chatting like I always do, you all know me well, and you love me for it, as does my audience everywhere. Make sure you follow us on YouTube. Let's get into it. Thank you for coming, Karen.
Thank you for having me, Jocelyn.
I know you've got crazy business.
That's okay, because we each individually need to be hot under the collar about what's going on, because we've been being told in many areas that this is what's happening, and we're finding out, no, that's not what's happening. Mm-hmm. The media has been misguiding us for many years. Mm-hmm. And I think it's really funny now because for the last 18 months to 2 years, we're discovering now how much the media was really a propaganda machine. Mm-hmm. And now we hear about Ukraine and how bad Putin is, and nobody's doing the research. It's not the way you think it is. And why now are you believing the same media that misled you on the pandemic? why are you believing them now just because it's another situation?
Correct.
Each person needs to get hot under the collar about the fact that we really have to dig in and show up and do some research on our own.
Yep.
And the nice thing about all of this, Pan, was the fact that we were at home, and because we were at home, and because we weren't allowed to go to the restaurant or to go visit grandma or to go wherever, we were sort of locked into our own homes. We found the computer, and we found out that, the internet can be used for good things.
Correct.
Not just pornography. But it can be used for good things like good research. And there are a lot of alternative media out there that can give us some in-depth stories. And just like my mom used to say, there is no one side of a story.
Correct.
There's even the interesting thing is that even your investigative officers, when they come up on a scene where there's been an accident, they know if something's not quite right in the testimony of the witnesses, if their stories match identically. They want to, because everybody, when they observe something that happened in front of them, bring their own background with it, their own experience, and so they see different things. That used to happen to me when we were in the military and going through a house inspection. One inspector would show up, and he turned my refrigerator upside down almost and check underneath to see if I'd vacuumed underneath the coils, which I thought was outrageous. Another one would come in, and he'd go along the top of the door of the door sill, right, and check to see if there was any dust up there. So it just depends. Different people
Very
do
subjective.
things. Right. And so when we're looking at information that we're getting off the internet, we need to look and see, are we seeing this just from one source? And sometimes you see 3 or 4 times it'll pop up in different locations, but check where their source is.
Exactly.
Is it all AP, or is it coming from different places?
Right. The other thing is, when you see from coast to coast the same story on every news station,
the same sound
the exact same soundbite, which you have been told is Project Mockingbird. And what that means is they are mocking and saying the exact same thing for the exact same story. When you hear that over and over and over again, and I know you've seen the clips on Facebook, I know you've seen them on Instagram, and don't go, oh, I don't like it. It's another form of information. You need to take multiple forms, and like Karen said, see where they're all coming from. If they're from different places, great. If they're all saying the same thing, then I'd start to get worried. And if they're literally word for word, which is what you're seeing in the clips, run for the hills and start researching, because that's Project Mockingbird. That is mimicking and saying the same thing over and over again, because quite frankly, a lie told multiple times becomes the truth. And we need to cover our ears and pay attention. You were born with the encyclopedia inside of you. You were born pre-programmed to know what's right and wrong. It's all this exterior stuff that has dragged you off who you were supposed to be and what you're supposed to know. I'm like at my wit's end.
Well, there's been so much lately that we've been, and the frustration is that sometimes when we're talking to somebody, a wall goes up immediately, and we're not having a discussion. That is one of the things that we've always cherished in this country, was that the freedom to speak was out there, the freedom to assembly was out there, to assemble, the freedom to have the religious views that you possess didn't have to be one size fits all. It was individual. And so part of the beauty of our country and what we had was that we could have these discussions. Well, anymore, you can't have these discussions because there is this wall. And one side sits over here and one side sits over here.
And the funny part is we probably agree on 85% of everything. It's the 15% that we don't. and you go into the name calling, or they go into just calling you horrendous names. And when it's name calling, not followed by any facts or statistics or data, just saying.
Well, and the other thing is that we should be able to ask questions. But a lot of times when you start asking questions anymore, the wall goes up. So we have to come to the realization that the best thing that we can do is to allow somebody to go ahead and talk, but then ask questions about what is it? Did I really hear what you're saying, so that they can hear what they're saying? Because a lot of times we're just parroting what not we, but some people are just parroting what they've heard lately, what the mantra is, and they really can't defend it. If they can't defend it, they don't really want to talk to you. So we, at that point, ask the question. I saw a clip with Diana Ploss the other day.
Yes.
And Diana is running for governor in
Massachusetts. Yep.
And she was going up to this group of, I think they were probably Gen Xers, or maybe they were Gen Zers. But at any rate, she just asked them, do you know what 1776 was? I don't remember exactly what the quote was. That's my paraphrase. But do you know what this means? Go look it up. That's all she said to him. Go look it up. Well, do you know what critical race really is? Go look it up. And that kind of thing is helpful, because then you're encouraging somebody. You're not getting into an argument with them. You're not giving them your thoughts. You go find out for yourself.
Yep.
Planting a seed to go investigate.
Exactly. And we're seeing this in our schools. Yeah. We're seeing this in the medical fields, in the medical, as far as us getting medical help. We're seeing this in our towns. We're seeing it in the state. I mean, everywhere we look, you're being told, you can't do that, you can't say that, you can't think this, we can't this. This is the United States of America, last time I checked. We are a republic. The next person that says we're a democracy, I'm going to smack you.
It's a democratic republic, right.
It's a democratic republic. And the difference being, do you want to explain the difference?
Well, the difference being that in a democracy, it's you just take a vote and the majority wins. And that's it. There's no discussion. In a democratic republic, we the people elect representatives who then go and discuss this and come back with something, and they present it back to us. Technically,
keywords.
They're supposed to present
it
back to us so that we can either okay it or not okay it.
Correct.
So here's something that I thought was very interesting. My New York lawyer friend, right, puts out a tweet, and he's talking about a particular Supreme Court of the United States decision, but he refers to it as the Supreme Court of the United States has the law of the Supreme Court, right? And I said, well, I think it's very interesting that you said that, because quite honestly, when I looked at it, the original intent by the founders was that the legislature would make laws.
Correct.
The executive would enforce the laws, and the judicial would interpret.
Correct.
So at some point, the judicial does not make law.
No.
And neither does the executive.
Correct.
But in current day, today, how many decisions out of the U.S. Supreme Court are now regarded as law?
Many, if not all.
Right. Roe versus Wade, I can't even tell you all of them, but there's certain ones that one is the one that's a hot button right now. But the reality is it's up to the legislature to make those laws.
Ergo, separation of the branches, separation of powers, which literally means this is the executive branch, which is and on the federal level is the president. On a state level is your governor. That's the executive branch. Any executive orders, emergency orders that the president or the governor put out are for their administration only. Not you, not me, not you, not anybody else, just the people that work for the president or the governor. You then have the legislative branch, federal or state. It is the only branch of government that is allowed to make law and send it back to the people for us to vote on, and then they actually pass it or put it forward. The judicial branch, the legal branch, there's nothing justice about what we have now, makes opinion.
Yeah.
Interprets. They don't make law. Separation of the three branches of government. It's never changed. That is the Constitution. But what do we get? And my point being, no one branch of the three may give their power to another branch.
Correct.
Ever. But what have we looked at for multiple years, but very specifically, because everybody's lives are so crazy and busy, the last 2 years with COVID, we saw governors making law and forcing it upon the people.
Right.
Stupid us for allowing it, but we don't know any better. We're just learning now again.
The whole thing is that everything was operated on fear. So we turned around and we said, this is going to impact you and it may make you die. Instead of us thinking through this and saying, wait a minute, everybody's going to die at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So my fear of death is a little bit panicky, and the media did drive it with their propaganda, right? The thing is that in the situation of a disease or a pandemic, in the state of New Hampshire, we have a public health officer.
Correct.
That public health officer can go to someone and say, we suspect that you have a communicable disease and we want you to quarantine. And if you want to fight it back, and if you personally don't think that you have what they're accusing you of, you can flip that piece of paper over.
Right, because they hand you a piece of paper saying this. Mm-hmm.
And sign it. And they have, 48 hours in order to...
The department has 48 hours to get you a hearing.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so that you can have... That's kind of interesting, too, because if you're supposed to be quarantined, how are you supposed to have a hearing with other people there that you're going to possibly infect? But at any rate, that's just a silly aside. But the reality is that we do have a public health officer. Mm-hmm. And what happened in the state of New Hampshire was the governor decided that he would issue these executive orders and these emergency orders, and he took over the responsibility of the public health officer without proper notification.
Without having...
He didn't have the authority.
Didn't go through the legislature. He didn't go through the people. He did not have the authority. And just because it's a pandemic does not allow governors, dictators, etc., to do as they darn well please, which is what happened in many, many states over and over again.
The only state I know that didn't do that was the state of South Dakota.
I knew you were going to say
when
that.
Kristi Noem went to her legal team and to the Constitution, and she said, what can I do legally? Mm-hmm. And they came back and said, it's up to each individual to assess their situation and make their own decision about what they need to do. Mm-hmm. And that's it. You'd have that situation plus the public health officer, and you don't lock down everybody. The public health officer will put you in quarantine, one person or a family, or it could be a small community, that you quarantine everybody there. But you don't quarantine the whole state.
Correct.
And you don't turn around to the whole state and say you can stay open because you're a box store and you're a liquor store, but if you want to go to church, you have to keep it under, 10? Come on, give me a break.
Right. And they did the same with schools.
They did the same with schools. And then they violated the state law, 124, I forgot what the colon part is, but 124. Says that you may not, schools and institutions. It didn't say special schools. It said schools or institutions cannot inhibit the breathing of a child.
Correct.
And yet, all over this state, They covered our children's faces, gave them psychological problems. And then we find out, too, that the Department of Education and the governor colluded together to break the law, which says that every student is supposed to have 180 days of instruction. There's 5 days that you can have where you might not have the instruction usually due to weather.
Yeah.
Well, they decided that we can do away with that. However, they decided to do that. And so that's how they got the remote learning into the homes and locked everybody down in their homes.
Once again, gross overstep.
Totally. And there's other things that was done during that. But stop and think about it. It took 21 executive orders and 90 emergency orders to control the people of New Hampshire, to put us in a state of fear and say that you have to do this. And the sad part about it is that people died because of this.
Yes,
people
they did.
committed suicide because of the loneliness that they felt from being there.
Our seniors,
85% of the deaths in the state of New Hampshire were in long-term care facilities. Okay, where was the investigation by the governor and the Health and Human Services?
There wasn't.
To find out why. What's causing this? This is abnormal. The other thing is that we had a 15-year-old going into an emergency room, and because of the restrictions, the child was not allowed to have his primary advocacy, which is her parents, go with him. He had to go by himself. You have somebody who is...
How is that possible? That is a minor, and the parent is 100% responsible also financially.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in all decision making.
Absolutely.
So now all of a sudden we have perfect strangers.
So the other thing too
wow.
So let me finish this one.
Yeah.
You had senior citizens who grandma had dementia and granddaughter shows up to visit, but she has to stay 6 feet away. She can't give her a hug. Grandma doesn't understand why. How many of the seniors were visited inside their rooms through a glass window with people standing outside waving at them? How many people died by themselves?
How many husbands and wives were separated in those homes?
Exactly. In fact, I know one family where the wife had to really, literally fight with him because her husband was dying and she knew it and she wanted her daughters to be able to say goodbye to him. How many people died by themselves? Nancy Elliott's mother died by herself.
Nancy Elliott died by herself. Yeah.
No, her mother also.
Oh, her mother.
Her mother at the very beginning died by herself.
Really?
Yes. So anyway, that is a crime against humanity where's our compassion? We are social people, social beings, and this is something that we need to be able to do. Yeah. So fast forward to today, and we're the injections. We're trying to get the injections for the young people, and we're putting clinics in our schools. So you have this young man who goes into an emergency room, can't take his parents with him. You don't know what they're going to shoot into him.
No.
You don't know if they're going to violate his body in that way.
Correct. Not have a correct history.
Right.
He's young. Probably doesn't have a big history. The parents would know it, though. And we go to our schools, and because you don't, you're complicit because you just sent them.
Right.
That's not how that works.
This is also something that we just found out. A grandfather said, granddaughter comes in, she's 7 years old. Grandpa, am I bisexual?
What?
So they called a school to find out. It's an opt-in program, and it's an opt-out program, and why didn't you opt your child out if you didn't want them to know this?
Because you didn't tell them.
Well, because when you look at the description of what the class is, it's not anywhere close to it.
There's the other part of it.
Right.
It should always be opt-in. It should never be opt-out, because the lines of communication, as we've seen in the last 2 years, are pitiful.
So part of the solution to something like that would be that all classroom curriculum for the week coming up must be online for parents, or in the school offices for parents to review.
Yep, I agree.
And the other thing that needs to come back that has disappeared is the drop-in. We as parents, we as elected officials, whether you're a school board member, whether you're a city council member or a selectman, when it comes to the schools, you should be able to drop in no notice.
I agree. And I know that hasn't happened in many cities and towns.
Oh, because of security. So
yeah,
remember, when you give up a little bit of security, or your freedoms for a little bit of security, you have neither.
Correct. I know that's a tongue twister one. Yeah, it's very disconcerting, and I always come back to taxes. This is all taxpayer funded, and we've never been asked about it. The biggest one that I've seen this year, and it's been many years, but this year it's become very obvious that we have groups within our towns that form committees or get onto the special committees. They only allow 5 or 6 people, so when they start yelling at you, well, you could have been on a committee and you could have had something to say. No, because it's all incestuous and you pick your best friends in these committees. You decided that we needed new schools, or you decided we needed new this or new that. You decided, kindergarten. You opened up the committee. You spent the money, taxpayer money, to investigate it, get architects, et cetera, and then you present it to us at a deliberative and insult us and scream at us by saying you should have been there doing the committee. We never asked for it. No, by the way, where was that survey that said, hey, we think this is going on. We think we need to fix this. We need to fix that. What do you think? And if the majority of the taxpayers say, yeah, let's look into it, that's when you do it. But they're bypassing us. They're shoving us underneath, under the water and saying, shut up, you have no skin in this game. Oh, yes, we do.
Well, the other part of it is, too, is that these surveys, they need to be straight across the board. You ought to be able to write what you think that is in there in your verbiage, not yes or no multiple choice answers.
Correct. I love it. All right. Well, this half hour has flown by, so we're going to take a quick break, and I'll be right back chit-chatting with Jocelyn and Karen Testerman for New Hampshire Governor. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Chit-Chatting with Jocelyn, and my guest is Karen Testerman for Governor. She is running for New Hampshire Governor. So we are going to drill down on why she feels she needs to be governor, what she would do differently. And I think we're going to start with the hottest topic right now today, apart from the fact that she's got this absolutely fabulous book, I Choose to Live Free. It's got the New Hampshire Constitution, the original, the New Hampshire Constitution that they're using now, and the U.S. Constitution, the 10 Commandments, and there's something else.
Declaration of Independence.
Declaration of Independence.
Right.
So you can go to her webpage, KarenTesterman4Governor.com, and you can order one of these books.
KarenTesterman.com.
KarenTesterman.com.
It'll come up to the right place.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody should have one. You should. If you don't know your rights, you don't have any. If you don't know the difference between the constitutions, you're kind of out in left field. So today, Karen did a pretty intense news release. And we're going to continue to release this quite often. And so keep your eyes peeled. It's going to be everywhere. She called out Governor Sununu, rightly so. He's not following his oath of office. Surprise, surprise, surprise. Neither is the AG, neither is the Secretary of State, neither is the legislators. Not all, but many are not following their oath of office. Well, that's just something you swear. No. The oath of office is very important.
Yes, it is.
And you break it, you can be held personally responsible for knowingly committing a felony or a misdemeanor by not doing what you swore to do. So on that note, what was your press release all about today?
So it was about the fact that the machines were not properly vetted. So in the state of New Hampshire, the law of the land is the Constitution. In the Constitution, Article 2, or Part 2, Article 32, it states that the votes when we go to the polls to vote, that the moderator, in the presence of the selectman, and the town clerk or the city clerk. So, and if it's a city, you're going to have your city councilors there. So in their presence, they will open up and count every vote. And then they will tally it, announce who it, and the tally has to have the person's name that's running, how many votes they received, if you've got write-ins, how many votes they received, if you have spoiled ballots, how many ballots were spoiled. And all of that has to jive, right? When you count them, they all have to equal, one equals the other.
Is the word that they use in there, I believe, shall?
I'll double check that.
I think we need it, but I think it's shall. The town moderator shall. We think
or
that's,
or at
must.
any rate.
But it's a strong word. Must
is a strong
hand count the ballots in front of the councilman or selectman and the city or town clerks.
The point being that there is nothing. This was done in 1783.
Yep.
It was some of the language was amended in 1792, but there's been no electronics in that period of time. And when the judges look at the interpretation, they're going to look at it through the eyes of when the document was written.
By the founders.
Okay, by the founders.
So let me understand this, because I'm just going to kind of push back for what I've heard people say to me.
Yeah.
And I know you've heard it said to you. So we'll have the little bit of back and forth. So I was told you're being ridiculous because we're in 2022 and we have these wonderful little computers, which they are people, by the way. So let me just push back on you a little bit, Karen. I believe it says shall, in the presence of the town or city clerk, selectman or councilman, sort and count, which means hand count the ballots.
Correct.
And so shall is a very, very important word.
Exactly.
It's huge.
And it does say that.
It does say that. Good.
It does say that. It says who shall. So the thing is that at that period of time, there were no machines. There was no electronics. They didn't have that. So we're talking hand counting, right? And now if they want to change that, then it needs to be a constitutional amendment to change it. And then that constitutional amendment comes to the people and says, do you want to do this? And
we
2/3
vote.
of the people have to vote to change it, right?
And then the legislature can amend the Constitution.
Well, then the Constitution is amended. Okay. So what happens is that let me explain the constitutional amendment process. So the legislature, one body or the other, will propose some language as a constitutional amendment. What's the word? Oh, I forget it. CACR resolution.
Okay.
Concurrent resolution.
Resolution,
Okay. Constitutional amendment, concurrent resolution. And if it passes whatever house introduced it, it goes to the other house. If they agree that it needs to be something that is put before the voters, then it is automatically put on the ballot. The governor has nothing to do with it. The executive council has nothing to do with it. It automatically goes, and then if 2/3 of the people vote to say, yes, we agree with this, or they don't reach the 2/3, then it goes through the process. And the Secretary of State actually puts the wording together and presents it to the governor, who then signs it.
Okay.
So this explains why a couple of the amendments were altered
Right. And
at the
I've
language.
had people say, well, that's just ridiculous. We have moderators, town clerks, people. That's ridiculous. This is 2022. This is ridiculous. We're not using machines to count that. You know, we need to know who wins. Number
However-
one, go ahead.
However, only 10% of the world uses machines.
There you go.
And about 90% of the world is larger than the state of New Hampshire. So why can't we go back and count by hand? And, you know, just because it's modern doesn't mean that it's really the most accurate.
Correct. And there is huge discrepancies.
Right.
There is a lot of mistrust, rightly so, and no belief in these machines.
So Representative Mark Allegro from Campton actually did some research on this, and he showed that the discrepancy between the reported votes and the recount votes in hand counting was less than it was when you did machine counting.
Yep.
So machines can be and have been altered and can be altered. Anyway, so my press release was simply saying, this is what it is in the Constitution. The 656:40 is an illegal law because it is repugnant to the Constitution. We haven't gone through the proper procedure. We, the people, have not given our consent to it being done. It was done by the legislature and the governor who signed it into law several years ago in 1979. So
isn't there a problem, though, when
Well,
these
so now-
machines were first initially
Well, it was
introduced?
supposed
It was
to be-
on a trial basis, right?
It was supposed to be a trial
Okay.
basis, but that really has nothing to do with this press release. The press release is simply saying, we served you on February 24th, Governor. And not only the governor, we also alerted the Secretary of State to what we were doing. We served the Attorney General. We put it before the House Speaker and the Senate President and said, look, and the AG.
Right.
And said, look, we have discovered that this is a problem. We need you to fix it. So congratulations to the clerk of the legislature who put it in an email, sent all of the remonstrance,
Instantly. Yep.
to all of the legislators. They met today. Did they take it up?
Not that I know of.
No. So
Is that the inside information? They didn't take it up?
that's right.
Thank you.
So
You heard it here.
So, but my press release calling the governor to please do his job is that now that he knows, according to the Constitution, has a responsibility that if he is aware that there is a law or a practice or anything like that is repugnant to the Constitution or the legislature, he is supposed to act and invalidate it.
Right.
He's not done that yet.
Nope. And they've had
And
over
yesterday-
2 weeks.
Right. So he is again violating his constitutional oath to uphold the Constitution. And so therefore, we need to call him out on it. He's breaking the law. And we, the people, have to do something about it.
Well, maybe we should fire him since we are his employer.
Well, we did imply.
I know we did.
fire him.
We are
did
his
that
employer.
Yes, we did notify him that we were aware that there were other areas where the Constitution was being violated, and he needed to step down because of that.
Right.
So, but the other thing is that my understanding is the whole purpose, according to our founders, for the legislature to meet in the first place was to hear the remonstrances and the grievances of the people. Now, I will give the clerk in the administration and the legislature a little bit of room because this has not been something that's been exercised for a number of years, this whole process. But they need to know that that was the first job that they should be doing. So when they met today for the first time, by the way, in the State House, finally.
The People's House.
The People's House, yes. That we've been paying for.
And the reason I say this is I'm not, trying to be a smart aleck, but that is our house.
We pay for it.
We pay for it. Your taxes pay for that. And every time that they did not meet in that house for the past 2 years was unconstitutional and illegal.
And your hard-earned taxpayer dollars were paying for it, which is another thing that's a little bit of a rub, you think? At any rate, they met today. They did not do anything with the remonstrance. Now, that remonstrance should have been read at the beginning first.
Because it's the people's business.
And we were asking them to take action and to do something about something that is a real concern. It's more than a concern. It's breaking the law.
Correct.
Of the land, called the Constitution.
And as elected representatives of the people, if we have a concern, it is their duty and their obligation to take care of that concern and move on it immediately. And when it's presented to them as a remonstrance, that is the first business of the day, always. Just because you don't know about it, ignorance of the law is no excuse. You've been told about it at least 4 times in the past 3 years.
Yeah.
So doesn't matter how you feel about it. The truth is, a remonstrance is the will of the people. They're asking you to do business, and it's the first business of your day, and you didn't do it. That is very disappointing.
It
very.
is. It is truly so.
It is truly so.
So then, let's go on to something else that concerned me. We did talk a little bit about the fact that the governor, in his executive orders and emergencies orders, did restrict a medication,
correct,
that could have been
saved multiple lives.
Saved multiple lives.
Yep.
But because there was a restriction on it, and even today, it's been carried over because some of those medications are not even being fulfilled by the pharmacists,
correct,
which is a violation of the law to a certain extent because they're supposed to carry through the orders of the doctor. When a doctor can't prescribe what he thinks or he assesses is necessity for his patient, they are stepping in the way of his Hippocratic oath to do no harm.
Correct. Correct.
So this is a problem that is a carryover because there was restriction put on medications that, by the way, are not expensive to produce.
Correct.
I think it's like 4 cents a pill or something ridiculous like that. But it's not the Fauci-created medication that costs a lot of money.
Correct.
And
it's also a medication that's used across the world that we know in New York City saved thousands of lives.
Yes.
Straight up saved thousands of lives.
So in addition to separating people from their advocates and they're being in a medical facility that was controlling them in some cases, they even stepped in the way of people, the advocate, trying to advocate for their loved one. You're being too much of a problem. We're escorting you out.
Correct.
And they escort people.
They actually threw people out, escorted them out, threw them out, did not let them come back in.
Right.
Husbands weren't allowed to advocate, to fight for their wives and vice versa.
Right.
Parents were not able to advocate, fight for, speak up for their children. We have loved ones isolated and controlled in a medical facility, long-term care and otherwise, with no one to speak for them. That is so against what we are. So what they say, who we are, that's not who we are. But apparently that's who they are.
Right. And that's what our governor advocated for and pushed for. So that's a reason that I'm running for governor of the state of New Hampshire, because we need somebody that's going to lead the people, not dictate to them.
Correct.
We need somebody that's going to have compassion for the people and not tell them who's essential and who's not essential. This governor also issued his executive orders. And this is something else that we didn't understand, that the executive orders applied to the people who work for him.
Correct.
The people who are working for the state, the people who are the commissioners and so forth. But it doesn't apply to the public. And we thought executive order, emergency order, it applies to everybody. Now we know that it doesn't.
It does
so
not. And if you didn't know it, you now know it. Executive orders or emergency orders, whether from the president or from the governor, apply to their employees only, not you and me.
Right. It's not a blanket decision.
No,
there.
it isn't. Talk to me about the other thing that really irked you, which was the wearing of the face diapers, and I say that, and I'm not kidding, because you can't hear people, and we have kids that can't breathe, and we have people that have rotting teeth, bacteria in their mouth. They've got bacterial infections on their faces and their skin, lung infections, because that is not the proper use of a mask. So you've got a big issue with the face masks, and you also have a problem with the distance restrictions. You know, the 6 feet apart, stand on the little circle, because COVID won't catch you if you stand on the circle.
Oh, and if you sit down, it doesn't bother you.
It flies by
stand
you.
up, yeah, right. There's all of that.
You can open your mouth to eat, and it won't get you, but you can't open your mouth to speak because it will.
Or you can't sing.
Oh, it can't
there was
sing
a
either.
restriction on singing.
Yep. I mean,
And that
the
was
idiocy.
that was directed at the faith community.
Yep.
Because basically, one of the people who sat on the commission that the governor appointed said, well, we didn't say you couldn't go to church. We just said you couldn't have more than 10 people. Now,
Last time I checked, I don't know any church that only has 10 people.
well, the
saying.
average attendance of churches across the United States, whether you've got thousands in some churches, and you have a few, half a dozen to a dozen people that actually are there, is 35.
Right.
So we did say you couldn't go to church, but you can go to the liquor store, you can go to the big box store, but if you were the local
Patisserie.
No,
Or
I was thinking
butcher?
about the local hardware store.
Oh, okay. I see where you're going.
You couldn't be open.
Right.
You know, you weren't essential, but the people at the box store were essential. And how many small businesses were no longer ever going to open again?
Right. Closed forever. Permanently.
Closed forever. And there were even people who had been around for decades in their businesses that had to close because
gone.
they could no longer, and they're gone.
Disgusting.
It is disgusting.
What
And-
I'd like to know, were any of those businesses the recipients of PPP?
Well, that's another story. This governor has continued to go after federal dollars. The problem with his going after federal dollars is that every time they come here into our state, they have these little things called mandates, requirements that you have to fulfill in order to receive the money. If you don't fulfill that, then you are in violation of your contract.
So the contract between the state and the federal government, not with us.
Right. You're in violation of it, and technically you're supposed to pay it back.
Correct.
Okay, so you mentioned the PPP money. So there was quite a bit of PPP money coming into the state. The one that I want to cite is the one that was for $1.3 billion that was disseminated across 14,000 people, or businesses. What we didn't know is that many of those businesses were owned by a central LLC or something like that, a central business, right? Those funds went to Sununu and his family, went to Shaheen and her family. They went to Bill Shaheen and Jean Shaheen. They went to Corky Messner. Okay, that's fine. Now these PPP loans to businesses were forgiven.
What?
In other words, the federal government said they didn't have to be paid back.
Why?
They just said they didn't have to be paid back. So, okay, that's not bad enough. Here's the other shocker. So last year, in 2021, the Senate passed Senate Bill 3. Senate Bill 3 said, you know that PPP money that you were supposed to report and so forth? You don't have to pay the taxes on it.
So they got it ahead of anybody else who you knew. They didn't have to pay it back. And then thirdly, they didn't have to pay taxes on it. But we have the state of New Hampshire hiring extra IRS people that have gone back to, I know 4 families that went back to 2013 and made them pay back taxes that we have no idea what they're talking about. And I know that personally and 3 other families. 2013, that's over 7 years ago. And these people paid no taxes on the federal money that came, oh, by the way, from our paychecks when we were working.
Right.
So it went round robin, came to them. We paid taxes on it. We're going to pay taxes on it again, and they pay no taxes on it, plus they got it before anybody else. Oh, heavens.
Right.
Oh, my goodness. This half hour has gone so quick. What do you want to say to the people? What are your hot and fast?
My hot and fast ones, well,
Yeah. Grab us.
I am running because we do need a leader, not a dictator. I'm capable, I'm totally capable of running this state. And over the last 20 plus years, while I've been in this state, I've been in the trenches fighting for you, the people of the state of New Hampshire, whether it was for our families and life when I founded Cornerstone Policy Research, whether it was for voter integrity when I was working with the late Ed Nail and Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, whether it was constitutional literacy when I helped found the New Hampshire Center for Constitutional Studies. I also sit on the National Secure the Grid Coalition. I'm the state representative for that. And why? Because we're looking at electric security, in addition to how do we reduce the outrageous costs of energy in the state of New Hampshire. We pay second highest rates in the United States. And so I've been there. I've been fighting for educational literacy. I've been on the radio. You've heard me on the radio. You see me here on television. So I've been a strong advocate for life. Unlike our current governor, who has done everything he can to use your tax dollars to pay for the destruction of life. I think that we need someone who's going to follow the Constitution and protect your rights, not dictate them to you, not take them away from you, not tie us up to the federal government so that we have to do things that the federal government tells us to do. We are the people of New Hampshire. We are responsible for our own lives. I believe in you to be able to make your own decisions about what your situation is. I should be presenting the situation to you and allowing you to make that decision. And so that's why I need you to vote for me, Karen Testerman, at the polls in September 13th. And you can find out more information at KarenTesterman.com. And if you want to help me out, you can also make a donation. And you can now do it on your smartphone. You text Liberty to 801-801. Liberty to 801-801. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. We haven't been able to have a chit-chat for a while because we haven't been on the radio together for a while. And to find out exactly what you stand for, what you're all about, and that the Constitution of the state of New Hampshire is what you follow. And
it's the law of the land.
It's the law of the land. Know it. And don't forget, grab yourself a Constitution. Reach out to KarenTesterman.com. And I'll see you next week. Thanks for joining me, chit-chatting with Jocelyn.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.